Hey guys, today I'll be talking about what it means to have a full-time job compared to what it means to have a freelancing career. I'm going to be talking about some of the pros and cons that come with both of those spheres, and I'm going to give you my verdict at the end and what you as an individual should choose. So, just a brief introduction about me. I'm a senior UX designer at Upwork. I also am an expert visual developer. I'm top rated there. I have over 27,000 hours worked, and I currently am a senior UX designer at Mattermost. So, you can see my Upwork profile here. I've manually hidden the earnings for specific reasons. You can also see my agency that I'm associated with. I have a 100% job success rate there as well, some of my portfolio, and some of my projects. So now, let's get started. What are some of the pros of having a full-time job? Well, compared to a freelancing career, a full-time job, especially in your local area, is relatively much more secure. You don't really get fired every month. You don't have to search for jobs every week. You don't have to worry about finding leads or anything. You just have a very secure job in most cases, which spans quite a lot, even more than a year, sometimes even 2 to 3 years, and sometimes even more, compared to the freelancing side where you just have to keep on searching for jobs and it's relatively unsecure. You have a lot of health and insurance benefits. So, for example, if you have a family, you have your extended family, you have your wife, you have your children. So you're going to get a lot of health and insurance benefits if you're working on a full-time job compared to, let's say, if you're a freelancer. You also have the ability to have more personal connections with people because these people are going to be ones whom you're going to interact with on a day-to-day basis. You're going to have dinner with them. You're going to go on trips with them. You're going to know them. You're going to know their families hopefully as well. So it's going to be a much more personal and intimate connection. And obviously, that's also going to again relate back to the first point, which is relatively much secure, because obviously now you're gonna know the boss, you're gonna know your managers, they're gonna support you there, and it's just gonna create that the supportive environment around you. You also have relatively stable working hours. You have a rough idea of when you're actually going to be working. For example, whether it's like 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 or something along those lines, whatever working hours usually you have in your own region, but you're going to have a pretty okay idea of when you're actually going to be working, so you can schedule your routine, your activities, spend time with the family accordingly, since it's just going to be very stable. Obviously, there are going to be leaks here and there. You may be required to on some days to actually stay late or work from home or anything along those lines, but even those conditions are rare. It's not a day-to-day thing. A full-time job is very easy to get started with as well. A lot of companies hire interns, which they usually transition into probation, and then they can go and become like full-time employees or become like associate employees or anything along those lines, which is really a much more stable way to start your career compared to freelancing. Coming to some of the cons of a full-time job, you have very, very limited growth. And by limited growth, I don't necessarily mean growth in an economical sense. What I basically mean growth as a personal and a more professional sense. So imagine you're a designer, similar to how I am. And let's say if I'm working on a full-time job as a designer, I would mostly be required to act like a designer, to think like a designer, to work as a designer. I would be given responsibility over design projects, whereas as a freelancer, I can decide what to do. I can be a designer, but let's say if a development technology actually attracts me, like Laravel or something, I can study it for some time, and then I can think about like actually working on a really small Laravel project instead of taking another design project. I can't really do that in a full-time job. I may be allowed to do that. Some companies may be more open to that, but even then they may not be open to me working on things that do not directly benefit their organization. If they have a role where, for example, I as a Laravel developer and a designer can actually help them, then sure. But let's say if they do nothing in connection with Laravel or anything, then it's going to be really hard for them to be supportive of me spending that quality time learning Laravel and then working on it. Similarly, I have much less freedom in working hours because now, as I mentioned previously, those are just going to be like fixed working hours, and I can't really move them around. I can't really organize the schedule based on my own understanding of it, based on my own comfort level, and based on my own flexibility. So those are going to be fixed. You also have very limited job opportunities because obviously most of the full-time job, at least that I'm aware of, happen in your own locality, in your own regions. Sometimes you even have to relocate for them. But since they're in your region, since the sphere is potentially limited compared to, let's say, a freelancing job where the whole world is open to you, you're not necessarily going to have a lot of opportunities. You're just going to have the opportunities that are present in front of you. So that's also going to limit the scope of skills that can be leveraged. You're obviously going to encounter a lot of office politics as well, because now that you're going to form personal connections, there are obviously going to be envy, jealousy, competition, a lot of like negative office politics, especially if the culture is just not really productive and very nurturing. One major thing, especially again this last point, is going to be low pay scale, and that's going to be in reference to your locality. So for example, if you're from regions in South Asia, or you're from Philippines, India, Pakistan, or any of those regions, the pay scale in those regions is going to be is probably even going to be, let's say, 1/5 of what you can get, possibly 1/5 of what you can get if you're working for clients abroad, and that's just like a huge thing. Similarly, one great thing is when you're working on a full-time job in your local environment, you have taxes, whereas sometimes when you're working on freelance job, you don't have to pay taxes because some countries actually have tax exemptions on foreign remittances coming in, and that's the case for Pakistan as well. Some of the benefits of being a freelancer now, moving to being a freelancer, you obviously have the exposure to multiple clients and projects. You have the whole world open to you. You can work not only with different people. That's obviously going to increase your portfolio. You're going to have like different types of items in your portfolio. You're not going to have the same thing. You're not going to be working on the same application for, let's say, 3 or 5 years. Rather, you're going to have a lot of things that are going to exist in your portfolio. You're going to keep enhancing your portfolio but by a lot of diversity. Similarly, you can also have the opportunity of working on multiple types of projects, so not just design projects as mentioned previously. You can also work on some other technologies that you're interested in. You may not obviously get the same amount of money because you're just a beginner in some of the other technologies, but that's going to just increase the extent and the diversity and the breadth of your portfolio. It's also going to have a really high pay scale. So imagine if you're designing a logo in Pakistan, you may just be charging, let's say, 2,000 rupees, 1,000 rupees, or 5,000 rupees. Whereas on the international market, you can charge $1,000 or $5,000 for the same logo if you're actually marketing your services really well. On the other end, you also have a lot of freedom in terms of working hours. Clients, especially when you have freelance clients, they only care primarily about the end result. Obviously, you may want to jump into meetings, you may have to schedule meetings, but you don't have a fixed period of time when you're working, like let's say 9 to 5 or anything. You can organize your schedule whenever you want to work. You also don't have to work 8 hours a day. For example, if you get a job that's, let's say, $2,000 or $5,000 and you have to deliver something, it doesn't matter if you're spending 100 hours on it. It doesn't matter if you're spending, let's say, 10 hours on it. If you've gotten the job and you deliver it in 10 hours, the client doesn't really care how much you actually work for that. Obviously, he may care when you're actually talking about it initially, but once the job is fixed and he's willing to pay that $5,000, it doesn't matter if you do it in, let's say, an hour. He would still be obliged to pay you because that's what you guys have decided, which is why I would actually suggest working on fixed price projects instead of, let's say, hourly ones, but we'll get to that as well in a later video. You can obviously work from anywhere in the world. You don't have to go to an office. You don't have to be in a specific location to actually get clients. You don't have to go to the market that's around you. You actually just have to go to the internet. You have to go to sites like Upwork, Fiverr, probably have your own portfolio site, go on Dribbble, go on, let's say, just go anywhere. Just have an online global presence and just let people reach you, and obviously have different opportunities of reaching them as well. And then It's not required for you to actually be in a specific location. You can just work from anywhere. You can plan your travels, plan your trips, and work wherever there is an internet connection. You're also going to have much room to grow, as I've mentioned in the first point. Not only you're going to have room to grow in terms of working on multiple projects and then with different clients, you're going to have room to grow because you're going to be managing your own self. You're going to have to explore ways to get more clients. You're going to have to explore ways to make your portfolio look even more outstanding. You're going to have to find more ways to be more engaging with the community. You're going to have to do all of these things by yourself to be a much more successful freelancer. That's necessarily not needed when you're doing a job. You don't have to build your own online profile. You don't have to connect with the community necessarily. You don't have to do all of these things to be successful in your job. You just have to deliver really great work or great product experience when you're working on a specific product, when you're doing a full-time job. But here, after you've completed one job and you want to move to the next level, you have to figure out ways how to better market yourself, how to get more leads, how to be a better closer, how to be a good storyteller, how to convince clients, and all of these things, and how to perhaps learn new technologies. Whatever it is, you're going to have much more room to grow, because it's not necessarily that you have room. You're obviously going to have that room because you're going to be your own boss, but there's also one additional thing. It's going to be a necessity. Growing professionally is going to be a necessity if you want to be a successful freelancer. Now, some of the cons of being a freelancer. Obviously, compared to a full-time job, it's really hard to get started. You're competing with a lot of great talent from abroad, even people who are willing to work on a really low pay scale, who are just trying to underbid you, who are trying really hard, who already have a profile set up, who already have a great portfolio in their hands. So obviously it's going to be very daunting to start, compared to, let's say, just starting an internship or doing anything else. It's also very unreliable. So imagine you get a job. First of all, getting a job is very unreliable. You have to do a lot of things. Sometimes you have to close contracts. Sometimes those closed contracts don't work. Sometimes there's a lot of issues with payments, payment mechanisms, whether they would be able to pay you in your location in the currency that you're looking for. Sometimes payments don't make it. Then there are clients that just don't pay at all. They just take your work and don't pay at all. They just run off with your work. Sometimes they just vanish. So there's a lot of unreliability going on. You may get one project and then you may have a dry patch of, let's say, 2 months, 3 months, or whatever. So there's that unreliability, which is like really big for some people. It's really huge, and it can just be a turn off. Obviously, you're going to have little to no health insurance benefits because you're just going to be working on smaller contracts. Even if you work on, let's say, larger contracts that span about like 6 months or a year, it's very unlikely that the company is going to give you any health or insurance benefits or a 401k, which may happen if you are working on a full-time job. So you're not going to get that. It also requires you to be a manager of yourself, and you need to have a lot of control. So I've written that as a con because not a lot of people are trained to do that. They get demotivated. They don't have the motivation to actually work on themselves and convince clients, just build their profile up. They just want to be spoon-fed about like what they need to do next, and that isn't necessarily going to happen if you're a freelancer and working alone. The last point is there's obviously going to be a lot of competition because you would be competing with the world, not literally, but yeah, just figuratively. Because obviously you're going to have a lot of competition. You're going to have people from different regions, perhaps even regions that are much more cheaper to you in terms of pay scale. So they may have the same level of quality, aesthetics, talent, and professionalism similar to you, but they may just be undercutting you. So that may be a turn off. So you may have to find ways to outperform them, not in terms of just your professional capabilities, but let's say marketing capabilities, just being a better storyteller. So there's just going to be a lot of things that you would have to work on. So that's like one great con as well. And it's just really hard to get started. So what would be my verdict on this? Well, my verdict would be it depends upon you. If you like freedom and you're a self-motivated person and you think that you don't really get disappointed that easily, you like a challenge, then I would definitely suggest go for freelancing. And if you want to feel secured, you have a family, and you just don't really want to get into the hassle of thinking about how to improve yourself every day constantly, or have that dry patch about like not having a job and you don't have savings or anything along those lines, then I would say get a full-time job, and then let's say build your career up, build your portfolio, and then when you have some savings, try to transition into freelancing. If it works, then great, you can leave your job. But if it doesn't, then you can continue your job and you can do whatever it is that you're doing. There's also one other thing I'd like to add, that there's a compromise that you can achieve between both of these alternatives, and the compromise is having a remote full-time job. So with a remote full-time job, similar to what I'm doing with Mattermost, what's going to happen is you're going to get a really good pay scale as well. You're going to get paid really well compared to your own locality. You're also going to get, like, sometimes you may get benefits, sometimes you may not, based on the organization, but you're also going to get like really flexible working hours. You may have to just time your working hours with the organization, and particularly with the meetings. Not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to sit all day working on that particular thing for a specific time period. Let's say 9 to 5, you don't have to do that. You also can obviously travel around the world. You just have to make those meetings, and that's going to be fine. And then I think it's just going to be a really great compromise between these two positions. You're going to have the freedom, and then you're also going to feel secured, and you're going to get a really good pay, and that's all going to be fine and dandy. So again, that's my verdict. Obviously, it all depends upon you in the end and what you prefer. Having that remote full-time job and hitting that mark, that's like a really hard and a level that may take some time for you to reach. If you want to get started, if you want to reach towards that goal, I would suggest either you can go for freelancing or you can get a full-time job, and then try to develop your portfolio, try to develop your communication skills, try to develop a really great connection, and then try to go for something like that. But yeah, that's it for now. If you have any questions, any concerns, do let me know. And if you would like to learn more about how to get started as a freelancer, how to hit that first remote job, how to get that first freelancing project, how to write proposals, how to talk to clients, how to build your portfolio up, your profile up, then do let me know, and we can definitely have multiple follow-up videos for that, so we can train you guys. So yeah, that's pretty much it.